Hey, good morning. This is Pastor Doug at the Christian Church in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Welcome you again on our Sunday morning study of none of these diseases. We've been going through this for quite a while, looking at what the Bible has to say about somewhat modern concerns, especially in regard to our health, our wholeness, and our happiness, and how following God's rules are always better for us. So I hope that you have been enjoying the study. We're now up to the 15th chapter in this old study by S.I. McMillan. This is from 1963, and it's none of these diseases. We're looking up to now the chapter that is You Are as Old as Your Arteries. So that pretty much says it. But he begins this chapter by talking about an image of someone running a gauntlet. I don't know if you've ever had to run a gauntlet or gone through a difficult time or been involved in sports, perhaps football, where you had to run through a bunch of other players in practice so they get you ready to go on. But he has this sort of image in mind. And he says, medical science is really helping us a lot run the gauntlet of diseases. He says we've been safely past Mr. Diabetes, binding him with squirts of insulin. We've been around Mr. Cancer, at least most of the time, with the talents of surgical teams and the radiology that's been developed, chemotherapy. Now, there are some cancers people get, and they just don't have that same panic in the past because of medical advancement, the treatments that are available. Even Mr. Pneumonia, which used to be called the old man's friend, has been subdued with antibiotics. And so there's not that concern that we had. Of course, now we got a new Mr. in town with COVID-19, and we're still trying to figure out how we're going to get past that guy, thanks to the medical services. But there still stands, both now and later, Mr. Arterios, I can't say the word, the hardening of the arteries. Arteriosclerosis. For those who wanted to pronounce it for me, you're welcome to have at it. Basically, it's a hardening of the arteries. It's that thickening, that stiffening of them. And at least Dr. McMillan says it stops 54 participants who are running the gauntlet. In other words, everybody. Our arteries, of course, are vital. I don't know anybody who wouldn't say that, kind of the obvious kind of thing. But you could have bad arteries. Now, as we usually say, it could be your DNA. It could be the genes that you got just some bad arteries. But if you ended up with bad arteries and it's not the result of your own behavior, you still have the same problems. You got bad arteries, you can open up to having strokes, apoplexy, coronary heart disease, angina pectoris, gangrene of the bowel and the legs, certain kinds of kidney disease, and his list just goes on. A lot of fatal conditions related to the health of our arteries. And so he just kind of gives a definition on, well, what is a bad artery? Because, well, the openings around them become clogged, blood clots form in them with the plaque that's built up. These are sometimes because of the healthy artery knocked loose. They move around. They cause a blockage. The elasticity decreases. That is, they harden, they thicken. They're just not able to do what they were designed to do. And why is all that so bad? Well, it all reduces or stops blood flow. And I know this is going to come to a surprise to some of you, but living tissue requires blood flow. We've got to have it. We got to have people coming to us. Blood's got to be going through there. Got to carry the oxygen, all the nutrients that are carried by the blood. It is, as they used to say, the lifeblood to us. So, what can you do? What can we do in regard to fighting against this everyman disease of the hardening of the arteries? Well, number one, I know you can reduce fatty substances. Those fatty substances are generically referred to, medically speaking, as cholesterol. He doesn't go into bad cholesterol and good cholesterol. He just sort of focuses on the bad cholesterol in this chapter. These substances, the cholesterol, form tumors in the walls of our blood vessels. Those blood tumors are called atheromas. Again, another word I can't say. Atheromas. And that is why you get the worst kind of the hardening of the arteries, which is atheroschlerosis. Again, I can't say some of these words, but you guys know what I'm talking about. The substances, the fatty, the cholesterol that's going in their blood, that's rising up, that's more than what should be normal and good for us. They deposit that plaque. They build up. They obstruct the openings. They burst. They really can affect not just the heart or the mind, but anywhere in your body. They can cause problems. So what raises the cholesterol level? You could probably get on Google, go to Dr. WebMD, any of those kinds of things, get all this information today. But I'm going with our good book from 1963. He says, hey, one of the big problems is eating the fat of animals. I know it tastes good. It makes things taste better, but it's just not good for you. Fats are what form the tiny cholesterol tumors that are within the walls of the arteries that are causing a lot of the problem. And so you need to reduce or avoid eating the fat of animals. We've all known that for a long time. He's kind of on the cutting edge back in 63 and advancing it and talking about studies that are coming out. But he says, that advice was given over 3,500 years ago in the Bible. And this is what the Lord said to Moses. Speak to the children of Israel, saying to them, you shall not eat no manner of fat of ox or of sheep or of goat, and the fat of the beast may be used in any other way, but you shall no wise eat of it. That's Leviticus 7:22-24. Also, you can find a renunciation, a continuation of that earlier in Leviticus in the 3rd chapter, verse 17. It wasn't a prohibition against eating meat, but it was a prohibition against eating the fat of the meat. There are many who would advocate that the best way to not get any of that fat is simply not to eat any of the meat. You'll hear a lot of those arguments from those that are vegan and vegetarian and all those other kinds of ways and diets that people have. And so we just got to be understanding that this is a real issue. God knew about it, talked to his own children about it. Medical society is now caught up with God talking to us about it. And so it is something that we need to limit in our diet. Sorry about those guys who like biscuititos that are made with lard. Probably not good for you, but man, they do taste good. Another thing that can raise your cholesterol is eating too much, and as a result of overeating, becoming overweight. That is a touchy subject, so I'm going to tread on this pretty lightly. On average, people tend to eat more than they need, and so there is a general trend of people, getting bigger with each passing year. I've heard all kinds of numbers, so I'm not going to throw any of those out there, but it's pretty obvious. You look at someone younger and you look at someone older, and the trend is there to see. But there are some people who eat much more than they need, and their increasing weight is also obvious. Not so much that general trend, but you can just tell whenever someone has been overeating, their health just doesn't look good. They're overweight. We don't talk much about the sin of gluttony, although the Bible talks about it a lot. Why is it a sin? Why is it something that prevents us from reaching the goals that God has for us? Well, first of all, just going back to what God said to them, it's not good for you. Don't do it. Well, he didn't tell the Israelites why. He just said, don't do it. But we know why now. It's not good for your health. When you're overweight, when you eat too much, it begins to have all kinds of issues in your life. Not only is it not good for your own health, you also consume a lot of resources that might be needed by someone else. So you could push this lots of different directions. It doesn't take a theological discussion to go very far to say, yeah, I kind of get it. Gluttony's not good. I can see why it's one of the 7 deadly sins. Doctor put in a nice little chart in his book about how the death rate increases with the pounds overweight. You're about 10 pounds overweight, you have a 8% higher chance of coming to terms with your death. 20 pounds, 18%, 30 pounds, 28%. His chart just kept going on down. I mean, it was up to over 100 pounds overweight. And as it went up, the percentage and the probability of your life coming to a more timely end, let's say, was really high. And that extra weight, which is a nice way to say it, it is fat. The very thing that provides those substances that cause harm in our vascular systems is not just limited to sort of being some other place and we just don't like the looks of it, but it's causing real health issues on the inside. Dr. McMillan quotes Paul's advice to Timothy. Timothy at the time was working with the churches in Crete, trying to reestablish them, trying to get the people there to move away from culture and more to God's ways. And he said, hey, the Cretes have their own prophet. One of their own people said that Cretans are lazy gluttons. He went on to say other things about them. And then he said, hey, I can testify this is true. He says, correct them sternly so that they may be sound in the faith. Yes, we know that godliness benefits everything and our physical health helps little, but that little bit is a lot in this life. And so we do want to make sure that we are following God in that area, making sure that we are not caught up in that sin and bringing diseases into our life that we don't have to have in the same way as those who go down that path. The Bible's full of warnings about the intemperance of eating. And as I said, it's a touchy subject. You start talking to someone and they get defensive, they get hurt feelings. And so, go into this area with a lot of love and a lot of care and a lot of compassion and start with yourself. That's probably where you really need to start instead of worrying about the other people around you and what they're doing or they're not doing. You need to look at yourself and say, okay, buddy, I need to hear this and I need to respond to what I'm hearing. Primary advice, sort of summed up, is that you need to eat healthy, you need to maintain a healthy weight, you need to exercise regularly. You didn't even have to go down to the doctor for a visit. So if you want to send in any extra payments, just send them right in through PayPal to the Christian Church. Mark it Pastor Doug. I'll go out and have a nice big steak. No, no, I won't be doing that. But you get the idea. You're going to hear this from anyone who's concerned about your health. And you heard about it first in the Bible. Another thing, and I didn't relate this, unfortunately, we don't have as much problem now as they had back in '63, but smoking. Smoking increases cholesterol in the blood. I had no idea. He says that if 1/3 of 187,000 patients in a study that was conducted over 44 months of those who suffered coronary disease smoked, 1/3 of them. And that coronary disease was the result of that heightened cholesterol. In another study of 452,507, don't want to miss anyone, in relating to arteriocolitic, another one of those words, heart disease deaths, 150,000 of them were attributed to their elevated cholesterol to primarily smoking, not to overweight. So if you're like me, you're going like, well, how does that work? How does smoking make that much of an impact in cholesterol? Well, nicotine stimulates the formation of adrenaline, the free fatty acids, and the rise of cholesterol. It's a chemical reaction that goes in our body that works against our health. And so you just need to not not be involved in those kinds of things if you want better health. God is trying to give us directions, and the medical treatments now are saying the same thing. Another thing that raises our cholesterol level, you could have guessed this one because of just our recent study: emotional turmoil and stress. It also puts our body in an alert reaction in which adrenaline is rushed into the blood system, and that also has that same effect of raising not only the blood pressure, but raising the cholesterol. Don't know how that works as our advantage. Got to have some positive way it's working, or we wouldn't be there, but we'll have to leave that for the medical professionals. This medical professional and our doctor, remember, none of these diseases, said that there's really not a lot of help out there in overcoming your stress and your fear from the medical sciences. He said, fears are common, and sometimes they are not just your individual personal fears, but there are fears that we all share together. He talked about Franklin D. Roosevelt, who met with a number of world leaders and initiated the Atlantic Charter of the Four Freedoms. I don't know what all four of them are, but one of those was to be free from fear. Wouldn't that be great in the world today? If we could be free from fear, free from the fear of attack from one nation to another, maybe even free of the fear of disease or pestilence or all the other kinds of things, man, that would be great. But they signed this thing. We want people to be free from fear. A lot easier to write it on paper than make it happen. 4 short years later, the first atomic bomb, I'm going to thank Los Alamos and the many scientists who helped bring to the end a terrible war, was dropped. But as a result of that, and even though it was a good thing in bringing the war to an end, it produced a lot of fear. Governments were beginning to have access to these new, larger, bigger, scary weapons. And the people who might be in the target zones of those kinds of things were a lot fearful. I remember growing up and going through those drills in school where you were supposed to learn to get under your desk and cover your head, do all those kinds of things. I don't know if it would ever helped us or not, but those things were asked of it. And so we just continued to go on and look at them. I didn't turn my ringer off, so you're going to hear that in the background here. And hopefully it'll stop here pretty quick. But anyways, there's a lot of fear. What are we going to do if there's a nuclear war? Man, just look at all the movies that are based on that one fear, trying to do it. H.G. Wells, who was writing, back there when he could quote it in the 60s, this world is at the end of its tether. The end of everything we call life is at hand. JFK, Cuban Missile Crisis. Every man, woman, and child live under a nuclear sword of Damocles, hanging by the slenderest of threads, capable of being cut at any moment by accident, miscalculation, or madness. And that's really where the fear comes from. What if some crazy person pushes the button? What if they don't understand? What if they don't communicate right? And it brings in a raised fear. But man, nuclear fear is not the greatest fear anymore. There are all other kinds of issues that bring people to a stage of fright and alarm. It releases all those adrenalines and other things, raises those cholesterol levels, damages our arteries. And so what do we do? How can we handle it? Well, the good book states that with confidence and with assurance, we can turn to the Lord our God and put our trust in Him, regardless of what the world is doing and the fears of the world. We're not to be like them. Here's some you've probably heard before. This is from Psalm 91, verses 3 through 7. Surely He will save you from the hunter's or the fowler's snare, and from the deadly pestilence. Yeah, that's pretty timely today. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and your rampart. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. And that's a promise of none of these diseases found in Psalm 91. Or how about Psalm 46, 1 through 3? God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in times of trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea. Through its waters roar and foam, the mountains quake and all their surging. Regardless of what's going on, we don't have to fear because we can put our trust in God. And that is the biblical solution for it. As they always say, it's easier said than done, but I challenge you to put your trust in God and let Him lead you to a point that you can follow His word. You can be at rest and at ease. You can avoid those habits which are not good for your health. You can control your eating, and you can follow His directions so that you don't have any of these diseases. And that's our lesson for today. Hope that you have enjoyed this part on looking at our arteries and hopefully using God's directives to help us have a healthier, a happier, and a holy life. God bless.